Hello friends. Right, okay, couple of things. Copperhead gasket, brand new one. I nailed it, meaning I got it pretty cherry red, quenched it in water and then pickled it in white vinegar for 45 minutes, so that's good to go on. The cylinder head actually is resting on the bike. The other thing that I've done is I welded a socket onto the end of an old crappy, sorry Craftsman, an old 1/2 inch spanner, so I can do this hard to get at nuts. A lot of people put them on and think you use the torque wrench like this, then you have to do some math because you've increased the leverage, but if you rotate it to 90 degrees, you've not increased the leverage anymore and you can still use the torque wrench and read it as normal. Basic physics, chaps, it's quite easy, just got to think about it. So that's what that's for. There's some nuts that go in under the rocker box that are really hard to get to, hence I've got the 12-point nuts from the Bonneville T120, T140 range. Thank you, Edward Turner. Right, so I'm gonna set myself up, put the head gasket on, put the nuts on, then torque it up. Alrighty, so I've just pinched up, and you can't see the ones this side. This is why you need this, because you have to get in. So I've just pinched it up to 15, 20, 24. So we'll do opposites. Come around this side. Just going to make sure they're all the same. 24. Do this guy. 24. And then this last one is a bit awkward, so I have to come in from the other angle with this guy. Ha 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 ha. So that's 4 of the head bolts down. There's 2 more little studs here that need to go. They go at 26. I will endeavour to do those with another one of these. All right. So here is that most wonderful thing of things, the QD hub, meaning that I can put the chain and sprocket on. There's a little spline thing at the back, and the brake drum, and have them bolted to the bike and take the wheel out and leave that still connected. I've put new shoes in. Here's the new shoes. Scuffed them up with a bit of emery to make sure they were suitably ready for braking purposes. And just wobble them in. Well, at least I did. I would wobble it in. There we go. There we go. And that is going to bolt into the back of the bike, which is my next chore. But the camera's over here, so I'm going to have to move. Alrighty, so a QD hub, for those who don't know, this is what it lets you do. And before I get corrected, yeah, I know this is at the wrong angle, I'll move that down. But it allows you to pull the rear wheel off, which is driven off these splines, goes into there, and then you put a spacer here once it's slid in. So it allows you to take the rear wheel out and repair punctures without having to take the chain off. But as I had to do the shoes, I had to take the chain off anyway, which is, you know, the way it goes. So that's what the QD hub is. I'm going to pull this off, loosen it up, drop it down to about there, tighten it back up again. This is finger tight. I pushed it back to where it was, and I think the chain's about right. It's nice and greasy, but once I got that on, I also set the crank at top dead center, so I can do the timing, and then fit the electronic ignition. I'm going to make a little brackety thing that's going to come here off the engine mount there to hold the clutch cable in place. I think that'll be nice. Once I've got that done, what else? I've got the rub bungs to put the battery tray in and put the oil filter in, and the little vibration bungs are here, so that's good. I'll clean this up a little bit. I don't want to clean it up too much because it's going to lose some of its patina, and then I'm going to start putting it back together. I've got the carb rebuild to do, so that's something to look forward to. But I'm going to jiggle the rear wheel in. I will of course grease up the splines, jiggle the rear wheel in, and then I can wheel it about. So let me get that all done, and then we'll start the camera again. Hey, right, so we're going to take stock of a few things because I've been a little bit busy over the past weekend and haven't had the camera on. So first order of business was the rear mudguard. It didn't sit straight. It sat way over that side, and it was helped out to straighten it out by having a stack of washers under here. I have since taken everything off. This surrounding frame was bent, so I've tweaked that and pulled it over. I've elongated the holes here, and also, you can't really see it, but down here, these mounting holes here, because they were pulling it all out of shape. So now it's in good shape, and I've also fitted the battery tray, which has got my bracket on it for the oil filters to go on. So now what I've got to do is I'm just going to push it off the center stand. It's timed at I don't know when you can see this, the pointer there, it's pointing at the timing mark, which is 37 degrees before top dead center, where I'm supposed to be setting the ignition time, and I actually degreed it in, and it's 36, which is even better because I believe that new fuel actually burns faster than old fuel. So if I have it at 37, I could get some knocking or pinking or pinging, as we say in the US. So I'm now going to put the rotor and the stator for the ignition unit on. I'm going to put the ignition module piece in place, mark where the holes are on the side of it with the marker pen, put the rotating piece on, fix that, and then put the cover on over that. I'll do some soldering because I've got to put some new cable connectors on it, and then that'll be that open, and I can rotate the engine, not worry. Then I'm going to fit the oil tank, connect the oil hoses, and actually put some oil in it and try and turn the engine over and get it to pump oil through. I may have a slight issue with the, I've got a feeling I'm going to have an issue with the oil filter and the filter because, oh no, they are the same size. That's good. That's good. So that's the one that goes to. That's the outlet, and I thought they were slightly different, but they're not. So that's good. So I was worrying about nothing. In the middle of the night, I was making all sorts of fancy adapters to make it fit because I thought the oil tank was slightly smaller, but I don't have to worry. So that's good. That's it. All right, small victories. So boiler unit on. Well, at least the sender unit. There's a rotating piece under here that you can't see, the rotor. There's a little, I don't know if you can see it, a little blue mark there. That lines up with the hole. And you put the rotating piece on. It's supposed to give it a bang with a hammer to sit it on the seat. I just did it up with the nut and then all the Allen screw and bolted it in. And then you line up a white dot with the hole, which you probably, I don't want you to see it through there, but there is a little white hole through there somewhere. And that is it timed because it's sitting on the mark. So now I can play around with the other side of this, and the ignition module is probably going to go in here somewhere. I want to put the oil tank on, connect all the oil hoses, and I think once I've done that I can put oil in it, at least in the feed, kick it over a few times, get some oil into the pump, and then the return should come back up to the filter, which is going to sit here, and then from the filter back to the tank. I thought about painting the tank, but I kind of like this bike's old beaten look. Well, beaten's a bit rough, but I mean, it's got chips and the paint's imperfect and there's rusty bits, and that's really what I want to keep. The carburetor will come up here, which will miss the oil filter altogether, which is more by luck than judgment. Well, sort of judgment and sort of luck. And then I've got to put the once I've got the oil tank in, I'll put the what am I going to say, the exhaust on again, and make sure that everything fits and that this is out of the way. I may have to put a shield on or something to protect that. Maybe a little bit of exhaust wrap around there just to hold it out of the way. And then it's a case of wiring the generator to the regulator to the battery, putting a switch in, ignition unit, and then I'll put a temporary oil fuel can on once I've got the carb cleaned out and everything. Rocker box on, obviously, make sure the valve clearance is correct, and then try and start the thing. And then if it goes, that'll be a brilliant day. And then if it doesn't go, that will be a not so brilliant day, and probably some choice words, maybe, perhaps. And I bought myself some double-sided sticky tape as well, which is great for sticking the tank rubbers on. So I need to put those on before I next put the tank on. And the tank is going to look like that. I mean, I thought about repainting it, but I don't think I am. I'm just going to leave it. I think it's going to be great like that. So there's still quite a lot to do. Once I've got it running, then it'll be the wiring. I'm supposed to be thinking about putting the front brake light switch in here for the front brake. I don't think I want to do that. I do happen to have a start button. There's no reason why I can't wire the front brake light to the start button, just so I can, you know, if I need to just let people know I'm slowing down, I can do that, which might actually be fun. It could be a cool little thing, so I may do that. I've got the rest of the stuff to do for the throttle cable. I'll do that once I've got everything else in place. Wheels could do with a clean. Front wheel looks sort of alright. Rear one could do with a bit of a polish up with some chrome cleaner. And yeah, I think that's it. I think that's it for now. Righty ho. So it's Saturday. Not that really makes any difference, but I've been pondering my exhaust system because I'm not really super happy with it, and I apologize about the camera footage. I had a little bit of accident with my GoPro and my tripod, and it fell on the ground and broke the tripod, so that's not good. Anyway, let me show you what I mean with the exhaust. So here's the silencer. It's got a little, I've started making my mounting bracket. If this goes in all the way, the bracket itself doesn't fit nicely on the frame, and then the clamp piece, there's very little space in there to get the clamp. What I'd ideally like to do, if I come back a little bit, I've got a little bit more space. The bracket is then flatter against the frame, but I'm right at the end, which is a problem. So what I'm going to do is a piece of exhaust pipe left over from my Bonneville here with the we can see the Siamese 2-into-1. The pipe was way too long, so I cut about that. You can't see my other finger. About that much long. Yeah, you forget it. So what I've done is figured out that this is that's going to be about the right length. So if I put that on, like that, and then weld this on the end here. I've got to chamfer it and like, trick it up. If I just bang it in here quickly, well, it goes down to roughly the line. That then would sit there like that. This gives me, and I need to angle the bracket properly, gives me a little bit more spring on the bracket, maybe a little bit too much, so maybe I triangulate the bracket. But it's flat against the frame now, and the clearance on the shock, the clearance on the shock is pretty good. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to lengthen the exhaust pipe by, what's that, 1.5 inches, or if the women watching, by about what, 6 inches? Sorry, dimensional joke for men. Yeah, I think it's, I cut it by hand, it's not too bad, but it's not exactly parallel. But I mean, that sits on there really nicely as the right diameter. It's tapered as well, which is nice. And then what I think I'm going to do is, as I've got that taper register now that sits very snug in this, what I can do on the end of the exhaust is put a couple of little spacers and exhaust springs, and then have it held on with a spring, like, you know, fancy race bike type, you know, with a spring here and a spring underneath that I can pull, and then I don't need a clamp at all, because I am running a bit close to the frame there. So and there's a rough, that's where that bicycle pump, this thing, the other one of these was there. It's funny, on the competition bike, they're actually on this side. They're actually here for the bicycle pump. But as I'm not going to be carrying a bicycle pump with me, I don't really need it. But there's a little rough piece there that I need to file down. So that's it. That's what I'm up to with this. We'll put this little extension piece on, and then this will sit out a little bit further. I'll pull it tight, put some springs on. Bob's got some springs he's going to give me, and then I can mount this something like that. I mean, that would be ideal. Maybe shorten that up a little bit more, but I don't know. But that to me looks pretty cool now. And the this piece of wood is in here to lift the pipe up so it doesn't melt the ignition timing wires that come through. I should have had an angled thing, but I haven't. I've got a straighty uppy thing, which isn't as good. And then the next thing is put the oil tank in, get the hoses looped. The hoses I want to get to come through here, to keep them away from the exhaust, and then put the filter on, filter mounts here on this guy, plumb all that in, get the rocker box on, put some oil in it, kick it over a few times, or walk it up and down the driveway without a plug in it. Just get the oil circulating. That'll be a fantastic time. And then it's valve clearances, carburetor rebuild, lash up wiring for the ignition, and see if it runs, which would be outstanding. Anyway, that's it. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing today. Alrighty, so quite a bit has happened, and I didn't video it, I'm sorry to say. So let's have a quick look at what I've been up to. Exhaust is in place. There's a bracket welded to the frame that the silencer mounts on. You'll notice there's a weld there. I had to extend this pipe. I wasn't happy the way the clamp was, very close to the frame, and I know I talked about putting springs on it. I may still do that, but I wanted to get this sort of away, so I welded, there's about that much pipe, an 1.5 inches, 1.75 inches added to it. I just dressed up. Oil tank is in place. I've routed the pipe down between the engine plate. You know, it's also got my filter. My remote filter is in place there as well. I've cheated. I've just pushed the return pipe on. It hasn't got a clamp on it there yet, but I've got some clamps, pipe clips, so I'll do that. Wrestling the oil tank into place was a complete nightmare because the bolt that goes through the rubber bush underneath was really tight, so I basically just slid the rubber bush up and down the drill with the drill moving slowly and just removed a bit of metal, and it all went together nicely. So the oil pipe is on, everything's plumbed up apart from the return pipe here that needs a clip on it, which I'm going to do now. So I can push this line. This will probably go a little bit, probably like that. I had to stretch these lines a bit by getting them hot, so they went over the filter, and also beveled the edge of the filter so they would slide on easier. So that's done. And what else? Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's what I've done so far. So I'm now going to put the other clip on, try and get that wrestled into place. I'll put the Kickstarter on and then kick it over a couple of times without a plug in it and see if I can get oil coming out of the return feed, just to make sure that oil's gone in, picked up and gone through. And then I can just connect it to the filter and know that it's going to the oil filter. That'll be the next thing. And once I've done that, I can then put the carb on here. Going to have a K&N filter, a little K&N cone filter. I've got some somewhere, and if that doesn't work, I've got some sprung filters. I've got a new insulation block to go on there, new gaskets. Got to put the studs in here, put the rocker cover on, get rid of this old piece of wiring that's there, and then hopefully get the carburetor cleaned out. I've timed the ignition correctly. I've got to connect these up to the module. That's one of the fab jobs I've got to do. I've got to figure out where I'm going to put the ignition module. There's quite a bit of space in here, which is nice. So I may make a plate that attaches to this, that I can have like the voltage regulator and the ignition module. On my T140, which is outside, my ignition module is up here near the coil. And this would, there's enough to do that up here, so that could be an option as well. My ignition coil is, let's have a look, it's going to be this guy. It's a little scooter ignition coil, so that could very well, you know, it's quite long, so that will go somewhere like that. I'll probably have to do obviously I'll do a new bracket for it. Probably wants to go about there actually, so maybe this will come off and I'll put two new brackets there. We'll have to see. But that's where I'm going with that. Yeah, and then it should be a case of starting it really. So that's this weekend's goal. What does it say? It's Tuesday today. I'm going to put the clip on. I'm going to try and get as much of that stuff done as I can. You don't have to see me put studs back in, or you tighten up hose clips, so that's what I'm doing next. And then we'll go from there, see where it goes. Alrighty.